start straightening. All right, we're good to go.
All right, well, everybody, welcome. Mike is not here, as I've mentioned, he's and Regina are trying to get to California to have a week in the wine country. So he sends his regards, and I'll give you a couple of updates later on, but he's not here. Before we actually get to the real agenda, let me just touch base on a couple of things, aside from mine. First, if you don't know, Davin has actually been recipient of a promotion. He's now the airport coordinator. And so he wears many, many hats. He's not just the secretary taking minutes for us, but we appreciate all your hard work, but he's the airport coordinator now. So Davin, we commend you. Many more promotions ahead.
Thank you, Diane.
You are very welcome. And then everybody, actually, David, you're the only one I need to introduce you to. Gentleman at the back. This is Mr. William or Bill Felt. He's also joining the airport authority and he's visiting today.
Hi, Bill.
This is David.
You can have this seat next month.
With his
We're
own
not-
name tag.
Yeah, Bill, there's this side too. This side.
Try not to sound so eager.
I'm not. That was just in the interest of conservation.
Well,
The trees.
Bill and I had a meeting with Mike, just as we had a meeting with Sunny, who came on instantly because Sunny, as you know, took the remaining time in Jeff's position. We went for 2.5 hours. This gentleman has all kinds of war stories, many, many years in the aviation industry and other things, and not just in Athens and Atlanta. So I think that you're going to really enjoy working with him. He's got lots and lots to contribute, and it was a pleasure. So I also want to mention Holly Overdyke is here. She's been here as a visitor the last couple of times. And then just another little announcement. We mentioned some aspects of it last time, but this is now David's really final meeting, which is why he's got is it a boarding pass or an exit? An exit piece of paper. So 8 years of service, you know, and then the next several years ahead of you. So we thank you. And, you know, if anybody would like to add, I made some comments last time, but if anybody would like to offer some thoughts about David now,
In all years.
he's here to listen.
Yeah.
David's also served as the chair of the Ops Committee for many years, so.
But David's always had some good input. He's had counter views a lot of the time, which is good to have. We don't want everybody thinking the same, so he's
Yeah,
kind of charged us up sometimes in a good way, so,
Very thankful for my term here. Been blessed to have seen the airport grow and improve. When I came on the authority, you know, one of the members at that time, one of my first meetings, made a comment that the airport needs to figure out what the airport wants to be when it grows up. And I don't know that it's necessarily made that determination in my 8 years, but it's definitely on a path towards figuring that out. There was a lot of up in the air, honey, about how this airport was going to continue to improve and be successful. And I think that that path has narrowed and is definitely the result of Angela's work, leading to Davin's work, with Mike's work, that have gotten great steps forward. So, it's a better airport, you know. I stress the campground philosophy, leave it better than you found it sort of mentality in life. I think that this is a better airport that I am leaving than the one stepped onto 8 years ago.
well, then you'll still be around there because you have.
I'm still gonna be around, no, just be a tenant and a user, not
Yeah,
If I'm in this room, it'll be in a blue chair. Beautiful striped brown and burgundy gold chair. So,
I see last time, 8 years is a long time in one's life.
yeah,
You know.
all of my daughter's life. I missed my
Yeah.
first meeting because my daughter was being born on
Mhm.
July 25th, 2017. Go back, that was Tuesday. I knew that. It's right. It's 3:15. So she made her press this.
So the next 8 years?
No more children.
Oh.
Not gonna do it again, man.
Say no more committees.
Oh, no more commitments.
I can close that
We'll
door.
see.
See people walking past.
We'll see. We'll see.
Do you wanna come and sit with us? Or you okay where you are?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Sure with Bill.
Okay.
If he goes, I'll go.
Okay. I get nervous about people sitting in corners,
Oh, well, if it
Bill,
makes you
why don't you come and join us? You can elbow Sam. And Holly's gonna come and sit here too. Sitting in empty shoes while you're not here. So anyway, David, I guess, the next 8 years, I hope they're productive for you. No more children, no more committees, or maybe
Certainly the former. We'll see. That's to and through there.
yeah.
That ship sailed.
So those are the sort of introductory remarks, and now we can move on to the regular agenda, if you like. We've got minutes from last time, and as usual, Devin has done a very good job on them, and he and I decided to decorate them in colour to fix little bits and pieces. But I think, if you've got any comments or questions about the minutes, it's the time. It's very- When you're ready, I will entertain a motion to
I move
approve the
to-
minutes.
So,
Sunny? Matt, all in favour? Say aye. Against, anybody? All right. We'll have the minutes approved unanimously then. We'll move on. Thank you. So because Mike's not here, we won't be having his updates. He did give me some updates last week by phone, and then Davin can fill in whenever he expects. I mean, what the reports are in the minutes about the project, I think also still stand about, the taxiway, the tower, et cetera, et cetera. So you can take those from the last meeting or from these minutes is still holding. Mike said, in a nutshell, everything's going well. The only thing he told me that was new, and then Davin had some others, was that the FAA team came out to do the sort of historical and cultural survey of the tower site. And he said they were only here about half an hour. So I thought, well, I guess they're not looking for anything suspect underground there. It's just that small site. So Devin can perhaps give you some other updates on those. Do you have the financials? I think if we've got any comments just to ourselves or none ourselves, we can, you always like to ruminate on some of the financials.
Yeah, I mean, if you,
Yeah.
they're, even though I know they're kind of small, just looking at it, actually, the airport passed the $1 million favorable bottom line, basically profit amount for so far the year already through May with 1 month to go. And so total revenues but minus expenses so far these 11 months through May fiscal year wise is right at $1.1 million over the projected budget. So that's outstanding. And what's really stands out to us for the year to date, looking at that, you can see on the far right column there, column K, the numbers, the 116%, where revenue for 11 months total is 16% over the projected or budget amount. So revenue is 16% over, which is good, obviously. And then if you look further down that same column, the 90%, their expenses are basically 10% below the target. So that's pretty amazing. So Dad and Mike and the staff are doing great with that. So it's going to be a great year. If the budget's based on those same results for next year, we're going to challenge, I guess. But anyway, that's really good results.
I looked at last year's May and, we're running about $100,000 more, this year than we were last year. So our May this year was much stronger than it has been. Which I would attribute that to, the SEC softball tournament that was
Yep.
here. And then also, the UGA baseball team being in the playoffs, and having some games here. So I think both of those, helped our May be much stronger than it has been. And as Keith said, our year to dates are running about $1 million ahead, of what we did, than what we budgeted. So our revenues are running about $1 million ahead of our expenses. And so we're in really good shape, from that standpoint.
Yeah, if you look up at the variance amount for the year, the jet fuel is good by $363,000. That's a big chunk of that $1 million. And then the next after that is a little bit further down, airport fees, $250,000 better than expected revenue for airport fees for the year. That's rambling there.
Well, no, you're not rambling. I think it's actually really crucial because remember when Patrick Davenport was visiting last time, and we showed him the fact sheet. Remember, he was surprised. Oh, we're running a profit. I mean, it's kind of like a well-kept secret that we have to keep pushing about the financial healthiness of the airport. It still remains little really understood or acknowledged, when it's that strong. I think it's a huge point to keep getting on whenever the opportunity arises. Yeah.
A couple other, things. So we have, our lease rates always increase, our fiscal year starts, July 1. And so our lease rates change at that point in time. They change by the CPI, which, this year is going to be 2.9%. So all those lease rates will increase by 2.9%, and all of our tenants have been informed of those, increases. We've not heard anything negative, from that standpoint. Some other operational things that are important to note is that, Titan Aviation Fuel, will continue to be, our fuel provider. This was after our competitive RFP process, and, we have yet to finalize that, but the committee chose Titan. So their, incentives that they're providing, are going to be very strong. So right now we lease three fuel trucks at this point in time. And they are going to give those, to us for free, over the next 5 years. So that's pretty significant, savings that we'll have there. Of course, as you know, our software system that the airport, our point of sale system that we have is a proprietary product that Titan has, and we pay for that as well. They're going to give that to us for free. So just some really good incentives from that standpoint. So
Why are
there's,
they doing that?
go ahead.
Why are they doing that? Why are they giving it to you?
Because they want our business. That's why. So I think we may be Titan's largest seller in the state of Georgia.
Really?
So we're a very important piece of their business. But they've worked we've worked very, very well with them. One of the things that's important for us is especially those football game weekends. It's hard to know what the traffic is for those, and we know it's going to be strong, but sometimes it can be stronger than what we're anticipating. And Titan is always good if we need a load of jet fuel to, make sure that it's scheduled and to get it in here, even if it's on a Sunday. So we've just got a good working relationship with them. And so for them to have such a positive proposal and a very strong proposal, we're excited about that as well. So, because that's going to end up saving us money over the next 5 years.
I wonder if that isn't a little item to go in the annual report, if you're the biggest customer.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you know, when we get to the annual, and we got all those little bitty commendations. and-
Right, yeah.
Probably with.
Yeah, comments,
Yeah.
So then what you're saying is, after 5 years, all that equipment, we will own it.
No, we will not own it. So we've always leased, so we have
Right,
2 trucks that we own,
uh-huh,
but then there are 3 trucks that we lease. from
Right,
town.
yeah.
And so that's just, right now, and those trucks will be new, so we'll be getting brand new trucks as well. But they just won't, they won't charge us anything for those, for the lease,
right, yeah.
but we will not own them at the
Still
end
your
of
property.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Still using it, will save the money, yeah.
Yeah. A couple other operational things. So we went through a request for proposals for a land lease for the piece of property. As you're coming around the circle, the first hangar here is the State Patrol hangar. And so we went through a request for proposals for that land lease. We ended up getting one, and unfortunately was not a satisfactory proposal. And so we are rebidding that again, and so that process will take place. It's a new software system that Athens-Clarke County Purchasing has got, it's called OpenGov is what it's called. So hopefully that is going to be a much easier process as well. But we do anticipate there have been 2 other folks that have expressed interest in that. So we expect that hopefully there'll be a land lease in place for that partial. The control tower has an annual runway safety action team meeting every year, just to make sure, identify any issues as far as safety is concerned. Jessica Turner, our tower chief, ran that meeting, and there were, of course, tower personnel that were there, but also airport staff were there, and there were 4 tenants that were here as well, and nothing, was identified as an issue. But there were some things discussed, like taxiway Bravo, which we'll talk about in a minute under capital improvements, but just making sure we're gonna have a really busy football season this year, and making sure that there's, open lines of communication for that time. We've got our Part 139 inspection that is coming up. That will be July 8th through the 10th. So, FAA comes in every year and inspects our airfield. We don't anticipate any problems there. Russ Pardon and Caleb Harrison have worked very diligently to prepare for that inspection, and everything at this point in time looks good. We will have a new inspector or lead inspector. So she was here last year during the inspection, but she was training under our other inspector, and so she'll be the lead inspector this year. Again, we don't anticipate any issues there. A couple other things to note, because of an ACC SPLOST project, several of our vehicles are going to be replaced with electric vehicles. So there's a SPLOST line item that it allows Athens-Clarke County to replace current gas-powered vehicles with electric vehicles. So not all of our vehicles will be replaced, but the majority of them will. So that'll be happening within the next year. And then we are also purchasing an additional new tug and an additional ground power unit for our fleet as well. So our tugs are pretty old. Ancient might be museum quality pieces. And then also to have an additional GPU will be very helpful as well. So we'll keep the old ones running as long as they will, but it'll be good to have new equipment there. And then, lastly, the FAA is in the process of upgrading our VOR, which is the VHF omnidirectional range, which is essentially a radio navigation system. And the FAA is going to be upgrading that, in the coming months, to a Doppler system. And so, we really don't have much to do with that, but, the reason why we're having to go to a Doppler system is because of the tower, the taller tower that we're gonna have, in a couple of years. So those are some operational things that are underway. Any questions about any of those?
There's the airport growing up.
I would just add, I attended with Mike one of the meetings with the FAA this past month, where we were here to talk about the remote transceiver site.
Yeah.
And they're looking at 3 different sites. Mike's preference, obviously, and I agree with him wholeheartedly, is to try to repurpose the existing site that's near the airport.
Okay.
But looking at 2 other ones, they confirmed they cannot put the transceivers on top of the tower because of the height, and it has to do with how far the frequencies broadcasting. It's not that long of a meeting, seemed to be pretty productive, so it's proceeding well as far as that goes.
That's good. That's good. Under capital improvement projects, RS&H has provided us with a timetable for the rehabilitation of Taxiway Bravo. So the first phase is scheduled to begin July 14th and hopefully conclude November 10th. Mike is working to minimize any disruptions during the home football season. Obviously, this is going to be a season like no other season. So with Alabama and then Ole Miss and then Texas coming in, it's gonna test us. So we'll see how that goes. But hopefully, Taxiway Bravo will not impact us too much. RS&H has also submitted the 90% submittal documents on the parking lot project to both us and GDOT, and they are in the process of being reviewed. ACC personnel were on site last week for the trail, so I happened to be taking one of our new employees around on a tour and found the folks down in the far corner, so they were doing an environmental assessment for that trail.
Was that the one that comes from the main road?
From the Firefly, yeah, to the main road, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, I mean, there's at least some satisfaction in the fact that's materialized. Because you remember there was a time when it looked like all the trails were kind of off the drawing.
When you say main road, you're saying from Firefly Trail to,
where the
Lexington.
new light is.
yeah, okay,
What
got
we
you, yeah.
have talked about.
Cutting through that was,
Potential.
Lexington,
it's on the west side, yeah,
around the
okay,
edge of the runway.
okay.
Yeah. Which also has access if they ever want to put a new entrance.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's a small victory, but it's a victory. You know,
I mean, it's
about that.
something that's moving forward, so.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the last thing, as far as capital improvement, is that, we're in the process of working with RS&H to assist us in purchasing that new ARF truck. So, that continues, as does, preparing for the construction of the new tower as well. Any questions about capital improvement projects?
Just asking, are we back and think tower construction will start what, into this calendar year or?
I'll already do that, so I'm ready to do somewhat after. More like into the next calendar year.
Okay.
We start seeing it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's 6.
That, I would say at best, these things we still, there's a lot of work to do as far as planning, and it just takes time.
Yeah.
So it's like that.
Then under marketing and outreach, we got a couple of things there. So we're gonna work with another UGA master's degree program to collect data and do testing on the Taxiway Bravo. So we'll be doing some research collaboration with them that has been brought about by RS&H as well. So our engineer, there is a Jason who is on their staff as a UGA grad and from their engineering program and knows the professors in the engineering school. And so he's really been the one to facilitate that. But they'll be working with us on Taxi Board Bravo, which is great for them and it's great for us.
What exactly are they gonna do?
They're gonna be doing testing, so they're gonna be looking at the process of the rehabilitation and collecting data as far as that is concerned, and then doing some testing as well, so.
Well, I'm just thinking of that goal in the strategic plan. That's a good example that we haven't had before, is a clear example of collaboration. You know, it's another little we probably should not forget when we're updating it. Yeah, that's great.
And then we got the Horizon Atlanta camp. We'll be visiting again with 15 kindergartners. They're coming later this week. And then the elections office, of course, utilizes our community room in the commercial terminal as a polling place. So the June 17th PSC election was held there, and then the July 15th runoff will also be there. And the last thing from outreach that I'll report is that I visited with Matt Smith, who's the airport director at the Gwinnett Airport, and did a tour of their facilities and kind of discussed how they operate over there. They probably get twice, if not 3 times as many operations as we have. But it's interesting, they don't have any ARF capabilities, so Gwinnett handles all of that for them. They do have a tower that's there, but that working relationship, I don't think is as strong as our working relationship with our tower. So it's a completely, they don't, they sublease or they contract out is what I'm trying to say, their FBO. And so they have 2 FBO operations over there. One on the north side of the field, one on the south side of the field. And so those FBO operations sell all their fuel and maintain all of their hangars as well. So for the T hangars. And so it was great talking to Matt about that. Matt is also the president of the Georgia Airport Association. So just a good opportunity to kind of talk to him about the work that they're doing as well as the work that AGGAA is doing as well. So good visit there.
Yes, David, I'm assuming nothing, they have no interest, or I know what they don't have, they're not set up for commercial, but if anything, and they have any aspirations for commercial service that come up in your visit?
No, and he didn't express any of that. I know that in the past, Gwinnett has been talked about. And I think part of the problem there is just, available space and land, to be able to do that. So I don't, as far as I know, that's not on the table for them.
Yeah.
So,
At one point.
and they are not, excuse me, they're also not Part 139.
Right, yeah.
So they'd have to go through that certification process as well.
Well, and they're so close to Atlanta Airport that.
Yeah.
Some time ago, though, Mike was talking about a guy from Gwinnett and who was interested in an FBO here. And I don't know whatever happened with it.
Yeah, so we
Restaurant and other things.
We did have somebody who was a mechanic, who had a mechanic shop at Lawrenceville and had submitted a proposal for the Colvin hangar. But his proposal was not as strong as our current tenant that's in there. So there was a possibility that we could have had one of their maintenance shops moved. We've had some calls. I mean, again, they've not been serious calls. So LabCorp does a tremendous amount of business out of Gwinnett. So
Quest.
What's that?
Quest.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Quest.
Similar.
Yeah,
Quest.
same. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. Thank you, David. But they had called us and had asked us about facilities that we have, but we, we don't have any facilities that are available, that would meet their needs. But there've been some conversations, with some of the tenants that are there, so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Any questions, other comments? Thoughts? Okay, well, thank you, Devin. A lot of information. All right, we can, there's really not much of an update on the Lexington Road projects because, like I said before, Derek has admitted that in the summer months, the mayor and commission tend to, kind of put on hold decisions and things until September. And so, they're continuing to work on the surveying, like you just mentioned, of now we know the trail access around on the north side, and they're also continuing to work on the south side on those little projects. So that's about it. And that's not going to change, I don't think, until there's another big round of decision making or recommendations coming, which is going to be from September onwards, I think. Keith, can you show?
Yeah, is it right here?
Just the other side of that. Keep going.
Yeah, so it's,
Other side. That way.
oh, so it is this.
Yeah, see the buildings, that's that, Devon self-storage. You see the long ones, they look like a series of trailers, that one.
Right there,
It's
yes.
just to the left of that.
Okay, right
There.
there. Yes, sorry.
It kind of snakes up, to the, like 11 o'clock where it keeps going and then around. And then you go,
So
it keeps going.
Yeah, this is where Real Road,
there
it's somewhere it's going from here to
To the
the
firefly.
trail in the middle of the road.
But it also has the potential, to have an offshoot if you follow the outline of the runway, between the runway and the quarry, and to keep going for a new access road to the airport.
Just inside the airport park.
Yeah,
That's a jogging trail.
it's a multi-use trail, which is an expensive one, why there's so much argument about it.
So it's not a secure.
No,
It'd be outside of the fence. My understanding is it'd be outside of the fence, and it'd be similar to what you got with the Firefly and the Greenway.
yeah,
Is my understanding.
It'll be outside.
It'd be outside.
Outside, yeah.
That's correct.
but so it kind of skirts the edge of the property. But it was dead at one point, we had that nice map, I think I showed you, with all the trails around the whole airport. And then it looked like the whole lot collapsed, but now it's come back in, so it's actually good news. But we'll see what happens. They're moving, in a small measure. All right.
Diane, let me also, mentioning Mayor Commission, we did get an email this afternoon that Bob Cowell is gonna be he's been named as the sole finalist for the new ACC manager position,
How
so
do you spell it?
it's COWELL.
Oh, well,
And
we have.
he,
So the sole finalist, I mean,
yeah,
it's kind of like.
Well,
Yeah.
they do a national search.
No process.
I think he still has to be voted on, that will then make him official, but yeah, yeah.
Well, where has he been? Do you
So,
know?
yeah, so he has been most recently the city manager for the city of Roanoke, Virginia.
Oh, okay.
And his previous positions include deputy city manager and interim city manager for the city of Amarillo, Texas.
Oh, okay. So-
Executive director of planning and development services for College Station, Texas. And planning director for Monroe County Plan Commission in Bloomington, Indiana.
Oh, okay.
He's got-
Is big college town, so.
Yeah.
That's the big news.
Well, then I guess they did do a national search that produced a new candidate. That's interesting.
So he'll start, July 28th,
Yeah.
as long as everybody, as long as they vote for him.
Well, Brad Griffin stuck to his word, but he said he was only going to do it as interim for a while. Maybe we'll get to meet this gentleman, maybe he'll come to our meetings, who knows? All right. Well, thank you, Darren. Okay, we are moving on. We're going to have Davin actually be the star of the show today.
I'm doing way too much talking today, that's for sure. So I did attend,
Coordinator now will give you a presentation, and actually, if we've got comments or questions, leave them until Davin has shared his experiences with us, and then we can talk. Okay?
so I did attend the AAAE conference in Atlanta, which is the American Association of Airport Executives. Airport executives from all over the country, were in Atlanta. We met, at the World Congress Center, and, it was a great opportunity for me, especially to, talk with folks at airports that, we're kind of I feel like we're kind of a unicorn in the state of Georgia, so we are a Part 139 airport, but we don't necessarily, we don't have commercial service as of yet. We're in the process of trying to attract that commercial service. So it's great to talk with folks from Wilmington, North Carolina, who are just very impressive, airport, what they're doing there. They've got all three mainline carriers are there. They've got two low-cost carriers that are there. They're flying all over the place. They are, the metropolitan area is about twice the size as Athens. Also heard from the Lexington, Kentucky folks, the airport there, they are doubling the size of their airport. Again, they're also doing a lot of work as far as commercial service is concerned. So both of those were very interesting to talk with. And I think, one of the other important things that I took away was that I attended a session that talked about the GA airport manager's playbook, and the guy that spoke there was a 30-year veteran of working with airports and especially with their governing bodies and with airport authorities. And he said there's one thing that governing entities and airport authorities need to know is the FAA grant assurances. He said, there's plenty that authorities can do and provide, but he said it is most important that authorities understand those grant assurances. And so, essentially there are 40 of those that the FAA provides. And if an airport takes that FAA funding, then they are obligated to abide by those assurances. So that was a great takeaway. And so Diane asked me just to kind of talk a little bit about those, give an overview of those. And so I'll just do that real quickly.
Can you pull it? Do you have?
Yeah, I sure do, yeah.
Send you the main document, and then there will be some links as well. It's like the tip of a very large iceberg. Very interesting stuff.
Find it.
Yeah.
So the airport improvement program grant that we receive, this is, the funds that we receive from the FAA. And the assurances, I mean, again, there are 40 of them very specifically, but just generally, they cover several different areas. So general operations and maintenance. Obviously, airports must maintain a safe and serviceable environment. All revenue that is generated on the airport must be used for capital and operating costs of the airport, so it can't be used for any other purposes. The sponsor, so Athens-Clarke County is our sponsor for the grant, and they've got to take action to restrict land use around the airport to activities that are compatible with aviation, which of course, you're all, familiar with this, talking about our zoning laws that we've got in place. And so that's, we're following that. And ensure that access and utilities are maintained. then there's also planning and development assurances. And they, consistency with local plans, that projects must align with local development and planning. We must meet environmental regulations. All projects must undergo the necessary environmental assessment. It is very important that we have qualified personnel for both design and construction, that those folks are vetted. And then that, construction, inspection and approval. So making sure that we have the appropriate inspectors during construction to make sure that things are being built appropriately. Then there are legal and financial assurances. So obviously must maintain a proper accounting system, allow the FAA to inspect reports and facilities. So this inspection that we're getting ready to go through in July is adhering to that. Financial records must be kept and available for audit. Fee and rental structure must be reasonable and make the airport self-sustaining. So, which obviously, I think we cover both of those bases as well. Other assurances cover non-discrimination and public access. So we must comply with non-discrimination requirements, race, sex, disability. Public access must be available to all types of aeronautical use. We cannot grant exclusive rights to any user, so we've got to keep it open for all. And then prohibition on unjust discrimination. So we must treat all users fairly. There are airport use and leasing assurances. So all leases and agreements must be consistent with FAA policies. The airport should aim to be financially self-sustaining. The use of the airport property must be used for aeronautical purposes. Then there are safety and access and security assurances. So we have runway protection zones, and we've got to protect those zones from incompatible development. David's done a great job with that with his committee in the past. Safety areas and markings. So we've got to maintain safety standards for airport services, and then ensure that aeronautical access is not restricted unreasonably. And, an example of that is sometimes there's a desire to shut down a runway for an event. And the FAA really frowns on that because they don't want to restrict the aeronautical use. Obviously, the primary and main goal of the airport is for that aeronautical use.
When was the last time? Later.
So there are operational and FAA coordination assurances. So every airport that accepts funds must have an ALP, which is an airport layout plan. The airport must engage with the airport users in developing that planning. And the FAA must approve certain types of airport development as well. And then the last set of assurances is dealing with administrative compliance. So economic non-discrimination, all airport users must have fair and reasonable access. We must not allow for monopolies by a single operator. We must give preference to veterans as far as construction labor is concerned. We have a Buy American preference to use domestic materials and products when possible. The DBE, so disadvantaged business enterprises, so encourage participation of small and disadvantaged businesses. Foreign market restrictions comply with U.S. international agreements. And then lastly there are a couple more: clean air and water compliance, energy conservation requirement, sustainable waste practices, and then lastly is access for intermodal connections, facilitate connections with other transportation modes. So those are just a brief overview of our grant assurances. I mean, it's much more complex than that, but it's, we are required, we are obligated to make sure that we do our best to follow those assurances. Because the FAA could come to us if we're not doing that and take away our funding.
Yeah.
Do, you and Mike have any, do you have any concerns with any of those areas where we maybe aren't 100% in compliance or have more risk of?
Yeah, I think that on the whole, we're doing a good job of meeting the assurances. I think there are definitely some areas where we could improve and where we could expand what we're doing. One area that I think is, to me, that is the greatest concern is our hangar use. So we have got some situations where there are some things that are probably in hangars that don't need to be in hangars, and that the FAA would prefer not be in those hangars. I know, for example, that we may have some aircraft that are not registered with the FAA, which means that they are not airworthy. And so, the FAA is trying to, is trying to make sure that what's in hangars is aeronautically useful and in use. And so while we, can't monitor if somebody is flying or not, certainly if an aircraft is not registered with the FAA, then it is not legally, it cannot fly. And so we need to do some work as far as that is concerned. So we probably need to do some hangar inspections and do some work over there.
If you would have to do the inspection, they wouldn't come in and actually ask to inspect hangar contents. Because you guys would have to do that.
Yeah, airport staff would have to do that. And there's also, I've talked with the airport director down in Covington, about how he handles that as well. And one of the things that he does that he finds helpful is he brings the fire marshal with him. And so that, it helps spread the responsibility, and the onus is not all on the airport. So, it's helpful to bring in some other folks in that process.
I know at Petrie DeKalb, on their county hangars require that the tenant uses a county issued lock. The way many tenants deal with that is, if you think of block where, you've got two circles that line up on a plate, they'll pass a chain through it, put the county lock on one side of the chain, put their own lock on the other side. That way, they're not just subject to the county side. But whether DeKalb ever comes through and uses that ability or not, that's just a portion of the piece. They the county maintains access to each other.
Yeah, but it's private property, but
It's DeKalb's property.
yeah.
You still give notice, just the same way as if I was a tenant in
Yeah.
an apartment,
Yeah.
I have the landlord would have the duty to inform me that there will be an inspection, but also the tenants can't say, sorry, the door's locked and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a pair of bolt cutters to do an inspection. I mean, there's good reason for Athens to have access to every hangar with merely, Caleb carrying around a master key. All kinds of things. There's fuel, there are combustible materials,
Hazardous materials.
so, they're,
Dogs.
well, and things like that.
Yeah.
Or, other wild.
non-aviation related ideas. No, we were exchanging looks about when was the runway shut down. It was only for the
The
fireworks.
whole airport, I think, was the last time the whole airport was shut down was for just
The
fireworks.
fireworks.
Runways get shut down.
Right.
for
Yeah,
Construction for,
Right.
yeah,
you know, we commonly shut down 220
Yeah.
for parking game days. You know, just to use that as a,
You guys ever got any pushback from them?
No, well,
I wouldn't
That's a
think.
pretty regular occurrence, I
Right.
think.
yeah,
And I know they do it at other.
All over.
I mean, they do it at Augusta every year for that.
Yeah.
right,
They
yeah.
got everything's parked everywhere for that.
And I also think, I mean, I think the FAA, my understanding is you probably know better, but I think the FAA's main concern is the primary runway, it was
Yeah, I mean, as
not.
long as once you've got the main runway available, I think it's fine.
Well, and that would only be an issue for, you know, commercial service too.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and aircraft that require it. There are times that we have to close 927.
Right.
Oops, so, you know.
Yeah.
Definitely shown up to airports and the runways closed
Right.
for all kinds of reasons. Figure out what to do.
And I would think, I mean, obviously, there's not a direct overlap, but the Part 139 certification would satisfy a lot of these assurances already.
Right.
Which is helpful.
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, maintaining the.
one of those sublinks, the first one, the airport sponsors one, was interesting to me because of all the federal legislation, you know. Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, Civil Rights, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's quite labyrinthian, you know, and it's no surprise.
National Environmental Policy Act, we call it NEPA.
Yeah.
It's a mess.
So, I mean, just being really concrete about it, to show your compliance, and you have to submit a form with your proposals or aside from an inspection. How do you
Yeah, I mean,
demonstrate compliance?
there are certain, things that are required. So for example, with the disadvantaged business
Yeah,
situation, I mean, we have a plan that's in
Yeah.
place, so, in your AIP, you've
Right.
got, all of these plans and policies that are very important. And, some of that is, is reviewed, with Part 139 inspection. I mean, we're very fortunate. I mean, because, that one thing, I mean, that Part 139 inspection was a fine tooth comb.
yeah,
But we're also inspected by the Department of Defense because of our DoD contract, so that's good. Titan comes in and also performs, inspection as far as our fuel capabilities are concerned. So and then airlines, I mean, so when Delta, to bring their charter aircraft in, they come and do an inspection as well. And take a look at, some of the documentation that we've got. So, I think something we might look at those inspections and maybe grouse, but I think it really puts us in a very good situation because it's not just one group that's looking at it, it's multiple groups that are looking at it. So make sure that we do.
So Devin, clearly talked to some people with over airports trying to pick their brains. Was there anything when it comes to these grant assurances that stood out to you that, I mean, obviously, everybody's already asked about city areas of vulnerability, but anything else that stood out to you that maybe you want to be thinking about going ahead or anything that I've discussed already?
So that's a good, I mean, I think the sustainability piece, I think is one. And while we're currently obviously very profitable at this point in time, what does the future hold? And so, for example, we make a lot of our profit on jet fuel, on fuel sales. And so, it's hard to know what the future holds as far as that's concerned. But, I think we need to at least be thinking of a plan. It doesn't mean we have to implement anything at this point in time, but we need to be thinking about how do we remain to be sustainable from a financial standpoint.
I was curious too, you said you mentioned you spoke to the gentleman from Lexington.
Right.
And I noticed that Lexington's about as far away from Cincinnati Airport as we are from the Atlanta Airport. And I'm just wondering if there's any commonalities or issues about getting the airline service that you might have discussed.
So what's interesting too is that, and Lexington is probably about, their MSA, their metropolitan area is probably about twice the size as we are. So we're somewhere in the 200, when you rank us, we're around 200. So Charlottesville, Virginia is right above us. Columbia, Missouri is below us, but Lexington and Wilmington are around the 100, level is where they are. So like 109 is where they are from the MSA rankings. And but and again, that surprises me for both of those communities, less so for Wilmington than Lexington. And I think we would draw from a much larger area than the 40-mile radius that we use for our catchment area. So,
Yeah, Wilmington, I don't know, to me, Wilmington's more because it's on the beach and it's
Right.
farther away from another hub airport. I just thought that off the top of my head, I was thinking Lexington has a commonality with how far it is from Cincinnati,
sure,
even though it's not gonna be a major hub airport.
Right.
Still,
yeah,
but you're right, it is a big radius.
Lexington supports, the end of that. Supported Delta Airlines, Union Airlines, several mainline carriers. Close to Cincinnati.
The other thing that confused me was the executive orders, because you're also liable for those, and they change. Some of them are a vote, and then new ones coming along all the time. So, I mean, how do you get updated on what is now new versus current?
Yeah.
A briefing that you better look at?
there is definitely information that comes down the pike and
Yeah.
is shared. So,
Yeah.
AAAE has a sort of a news blast every day of changes, that are happening. And so, and there also are forums where people ask questions and folks respond. So that's definitely, one of the best ways is
Yeah.
through that.
Did you have to have training in these, or is there the opportunity to if you wanted to?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's actually an airport manager training. They just developed a new curriculum, and I'm gonna go through that training in November. It'll be in Alexandria,
Oh,
Virginia.
is that one?
So
Yeah,
That's right,
yeah.
yeah.
So have you done that sort of,
I have not done the AAAE training, but I'm very familiar with all of this.
yeah. So any other comments you want to add or do something?
No, I mean, I actually think we're in pretty good shape overall. I think there's going to be a few minor things, but the Part 139 certification really does help these other inspection staff.
Yeah,
I mean, overall, and I will say that AAAE is a really good organization. They're very organized. They're very on top of all these things. And I think anything Davin or anybody on staff here can do to get more training from them would be to their teams. So that's, I think, probably the biggest one.
yeah,
From the tenant user side, this airport is very helpful and, in being one approachable, fair, having reasonable policy. I mean, you go around to a lot of airports and you see a lot of things and hangars are sticking out of hangars that shouldn't be there, and you hear about hangar wait lists. Those are the things that, from the tenant side, prompts the FAA to start looking. If tenants are saying, or proposed tenants are saying, well, I really wish I had a hangar, but I see these boats in every hangar, and I can't get a hangar there. That will prompt the FAA to come in and say, all right, what else are you doing? And I think largely, not to drown out what the grant assurances are, but they're there for compliance effort, not for discipline action. The FAA wants to continue supporting the airports. They continue writing the grants. And these are the things, the stipulation, the assurances that the airport's making to say, yeah, keep giving us money. Keep behaving and you keep getting your allowance. So, I don't think that they take that approach of, well, we're gonna come after you for these things. Just,
I'm sure they have a whole avenue of non-compliant situations.
they'll go back to Athens-Clarke County and they'll say,
Yeah,
we've paid you $4 million over this period of time. You owe it back to us.
Yeah,
and you're also not gonna get anything in the future.
yeah.
So that's what
Yeah.
one of those documents basically details.
Money comes first.
Yeah, right, right.
That's what's interesting about them, because they're federal, but then there's state and then there's local, all the different levels.
Right, so when we're contributing, and correct me if I'm somewhat mistaken on this, but when we're doing a project and we're putting up $500,000 in, or, from Clarke County, but GDOT is putting up another 1.5 million, and then the FAA is putting up another 6
Yeah,
that's the money that they're talking about.
Yeah.
Athens doesn't have that to say, oh, sorry, here's the check, it's just not that.
That is the airport improvement plan project. It's by far the biggest expenditure we have in present. $3 million.
And it's important to keep airports functional, working.
And I have to say, I mean, I think both our GDOT folks and our FAA folks are fantastic to work with. And it's not, they're not looking for a gotcha. I mean, they're focused on safety. They're focused on making sure that we
Yeah.
build stuff that lasts for a long period of time. I mean, they're very reasonable. I mean, obviously they have standards that have to be met, but I have found all of them wonderful to work with, to be quite frank.
well, and it can't be partisan either, because it has to be enduring, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Across decades and administrations. Yeah. Any other thoughts? I knew you'd be interested, please,
It really is.
I'd hate to have to write an exam on these things.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think? Go from different aspects. Any comments or questions?
No, I mean, you talked about your hangar vulnerability and, we just had a conversation with a different airport and they're booting out a tenant who is, actually, it's aviation related, the business that they're operating out of there, but FAA said, you gotta go. And so they're getting booted. And it was a matter of, the door was open one day, the FAA drove by and they're like, what does it look like? And then they were, it's a parts company that provides parts for aviation. And they said you can't operate it. Even though it's aviation related.
Any other thoughts? So you said, when you wrote to me, you said that you learned a ton,
Yeah.
quote unquote.
Yeah.
So what was the biggest thing you learned?
To me, the most helpful thing was those relationships with other airports that are, I don't know if they're necessarily peer, but aspirational, that, that they are doing some things that we want to do. And so to be able to have those folks and, as resources to say, okay, hey, how can we get commercial service? What are you doing to get commercial service? To me, that was the biggest takeaway.
Well, you're lucky actually that you would go in person,
Absolutely.
because what's happened to a lot of organizations is they're meeting online or on WebEx, and it's not the same. Any other thoughts? Go on, Matt, you must have something.
I'm very glad you got to go do that. That's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I'm very grateful, yeah.
Well, I told Mike, and he agreed, that after this, I think anytime he gives an update on any of these projects, that he can expect us to also say this. So now, which of these are an issue? Because, I mean, to me, it's a big learning opportunity. For those of us that haven't been involved. Yeah, it just interests me a great deal because it's so universal, the whole world revolves around compliance and accountability.
That's the recommendation. So that's the.
Yeah. So what when you say somebody criticized it and said, well, this is Big Brother at work?
It's weird, aviation is a safety based.
Yeah.
Enterprise, and you gotta have a lot of things to ensure that you operate safe.
Yeah, it's the safety is the word. Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is the right time with the agenda and all of that sort of stuff, but it's something that's been on my mind since I came out. Ollie, I asked you this question. I asked you about de-icing the Blackhawk. Is there any history or historical record keeping that might tell you how many instances of, frost mornings or frost days, things like that, that we could use to help justify getting a glycol tank and the icing truck or something like that? I know it would be a lot more enticing to a commercial carrier to know that there's de-icing equipment, right? Because they wouldn't want, a Delta jet or an American Airlines airplane sitting here and not being able to take off.
Right.
So they can't, they gotta wait till the sun comes up and all those sorts of things. It would probably take a Titan or someone to operate it for you. But I just think that it's something that would bear looking into. I know you said that sometimes that turned away a lot of GA. Because they're not going to be able to take off. But especially at commercial aero. If he's coming in and doing it. If you've got a regional jet coming in at night and that's his last trip in, he's going to take around 6:30 or 7 in the morning. He's not going to be able to go to a hub.
Right.
With the passengers to make connections out of there. He's not going to want to sit here and miss all those connections. Because you don't have a de-ice.
And that's a great point. I appreciate you bringing that up. I mean, even in my, visit to Gwinnett, we don't even have the equipment necessary to clear the runway of any ice and snow. And so, that's something that we probably need to look at, especially with commercial service. I mean, that's certainly something that's going to be required as you.
It's really hard to justify. I know in Atlanta, there were so many days when we got hit with just, a couple inches of snow. And Delta had the only snowplow on the field. They had to use a payment, big tow to run down the runways to do that clear. There just wasn't enough snowfall in here to justify flying it. About the same token, a lot of canceled flights and canceled, misconnections and all that sort of stuff. Cost lots and lots of money.
So something else to think about, you asked them, that is, that there's environmental requirements behind that too, so they have the infrastructure in place for that. So that's something else to think about.
Yeah, there's some places that install a pad, a de-icing pad, which is a collection system on the ground. It picks it back up and goes flying into the river.
And one of the things that is on our, our CIP, the, improvement projects is to do a master plan. So not this year, but next year. But our master plan is one of the oldest that's in the state. So I think it's over 25 years old. So that's something that we have scheduled, to do hopefully in the next year, because we're in dire need of it. But it would help cover things like this, so as well as, looking at the airfield as well for future growth.
So is that something you have to sell to the mayor and commission? De-icing facility, because I can just see somebody say, well, we don't get enough snow and ice date.
That's why I asked about, was there any historical
I
data?
think you probably have to do, even if it hasn't already been done, do some kind of study and determine
Yeah.
whether you meet, whatever kind of threshold.
What threshold is, yeah.
I guess it would also depend on whether we would probably need to depend on Clark County money to invest in
Yeah,
this, or
would
could we
that be
get it from
GDOT?
GDOT, or,
Yeah, I mean, I guess those just would be questions.
right, yeah.
And
It could be a
sometimes
plus or-
the provider of the service, if Titan, I'm not familiar with them, but it's something that they would be willing to provide to, it's their relationship with the airport to,
Right. That's a great.
good, provide you a truck that we're gonna lease from. He'll let you do the icer if you bring the truck.
Right, yes, yeah. These are all questions we need to ask.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Well,
the airports don't want to pay for it.
It's another thing to think about in the strategic plan when we update
Mhm.
we should fit. No. Well, thank you, Devin. I'm sure you all agree. Any other questions or comments, Devin? We're glad you learned a ton. Yeah, I'm glad to go in person.
Yes, yes,
So every time you go, we'd like to hear about those sorts of things.
absolutely.
I think it's important for us as well, very important. Okay, well, let's move on. I don't know if there is any update from the committee's business and finance, Keith, anything?
Well, the only thing would be that, in the next month's meeting will be our quarterly review of, speaking of strategic plans and things like that. It'll be our quarterly review of strategic, plans, where we'll take, because we'll be through, at the end of June, we'll be through with the fiscal year or this latest quarter, so we do that. You know, Bill and Sonny, that's something we do, once a quarter. When each quarter is done, we'll have a review of our strategic plan, just as follow-up and all of that, so that'll be there. By the way, Davin, just a quick question for you. I don't remember, I think Diane, you and I and Davin and Mike talked about this a couple of months ago regarding the master plan and that project. Normally, would you anticipate that master plan would, affect the strategic plan, or is it more the other way around, or are they both kind of?
You know, my thought is the master plan would definitely impact the strategic
Okay.
plan, because
All right.
it's a pretty comprehensive process. I mean, it is talking with,
Yeah,
of course, tenants, users,
it'll generate more to do's than what we, yeah, that makes sense. So
That's right,
I think the job, obviously, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have that next month, and normally I, meet with David and Mike, the week before, just to preview a little bit, but what, nothing else to,
Yeah, just as a matter of interest, I do give Sonny and Bill a copy of our most recent document with the updates in blue or whatever they were, so you each have that, so you can see how, every few months we sort of tinker with it and add bits here and things there. So they have those.
Yeah.
They'll be ready for the next round.
and I think it'd be, David, another year before we would update that plan when the city
Yes.
does the updates unless we have something significant we feel like we need to have in our plan, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Bill and Sonny, did you want to get a copy of, a clear point printout from Devin at some point? You both, I think, expressed interest in it.
I think Bill got
You
one.
got one?
Yeah.
Sonny, I don't know if you want,
What is this? ClearPoint is the software program we've got where we put our strategic plan in.
I got the thing about.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All
but it's not on that. That was the one thing that I said, if you're interested, because it's in a slightly different format to our strategic plan, but it's what they use downtown. But it basically has the same ingredients.
Yeah,
It's the same.
It should be the same.
It's just a
Filled
different
out with
format. Yeah.
updates, yeah, so you probably don't, I'm just saying, if you wanted to, Dan, would be the.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Any update on the, fact sheet distribution, by the way, like when you've got these groups coming, are you giving them,
Yes, yeah,
are
absolutely.
you giving them out? Or
That's right.
are you gonna have enough?
They are. Yeah.
Printing off,
At this point in time, I think we've got enough, so,
okay,
but we'll continue monitoring that.
all
You
right.
need help with that. We have 2 days, we got staff to work with you to hand out things, or keep them out of props.
Absolutely, I always welcome help as, when we've got tours or if there are, Ollie does a tabling event, so anytime anybody has an interest in doing any of that,
Yeah, I'm available many days, most of the days of the week, so if you want to just call me,
sure,
you
absolutely, great.
All right, operating committee? Yeah. Operating coming.
I mean, the phone tower really is the biggest thing.
Yeah, yeah. And we haven't made planning progress for our road right now.
We staff that.
It's part of the federal contract tower program, and so the other end actually things. It's an awesome deal.
It is.
I was just thinking, you said that we have two paid staff for that. On a monthly percent.
No, that was for the staff of the airport.
Right.
We were talking about money with us.
Yes, that's right.
That was control tower.
Our control tower has 5 controllers that are contract employees.
And the new tower they built, yeah, basically, it's not gonna cost us. I mean, there probably was an ancillary cost, but.
Now, that was one of the things in talking with Gwinnett, they're trying to get a new tower and they're gonna have to pay for it themselves. So we are very grateful to the FAA for covering that.
Well, under air service development, we all know that it's sort of in a holding pattern, so to speak.
And Diane, I've got a little bit of an update there. So David Bradley, the president and CEO of the Athens Chamber, and Katie Williams visit Athens VP of Sales and Marketing.
Yeah,
They came with 2 of their staffers last week,
okay.
just to try to rekindle the effort around air service development. And so we had a really good conversation with them. They are gonna work on plans to create a letter campaign that will help demonstrate community support and to secure financial commitments for a revenue guarantee fund. And then they're also gonna work on potentially a consumer pledge campaign where local residents would pledge to fly out of Athens. And they're gonna try, they've got a goal of 50,000 commitments from folks. And then they also are gonna explore a couple of other avenues that would assist with commercial service as well. So both of them, I think, are very interested in commercial service and want to try to do everything they can to assist in that effort. So
That's good.
yeah,
Why now? Why not before?
it's a great question. I don't know. I don't know what prompted that call.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if they had any
I mean, they,
information about trends that are expected with
Yeah, yeah, I mean,
industrial development in the area or things like that, or.
I mean, I think it's just everybody's tired of driving now.
That's good.
It is not. But no, I don't know if there was anything in particular that, that got them going, but I mean, they're both are keenly interested in that, as there are, so many folks in that.
Well, and I think we talked about it last time. I mean, community alignment is a big thing some of these airlines are looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're looking for.
It provides us with a way to demonstrate that, saying, look, so.
Very good. Any
Just-
other?
But with
Go ahead.
that, the next time that I guess Mike or you and Mike are visiting with an airline, have a meeting with them, is it potentially possible to drag one of those folks with you?
Sure, and I don't think we'd have to drag. I think
Yeah.
all we have to say is,
Right.
would you? And the answer is yes.
Yeah,
Makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Any other thoughts? All right, well, we're at the end of the agenda, aside from the other business. Anything else in the other business or new business, something we haven't mentioned? Well, hearing nothing else, the next meeting is on the 22nd of July. And we'll be into your next new 8 years,
That's right.
so. Well, if I hear a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
David and Nat. All in favor of adjourning? Right, against? All right, well, good luck, David.
Thank you.
What they say, come and visit.
I will, I'm here. Maybe not necessarily at 3 p.m. on every 4th Tuesday, but,
No more kids. You get beyond two, you gotta start playing zone defense.
That's right, that's right.
It's not easy.
One of us will be outnumbered. Right now, it's even. Two girls.
See you
one boy.
again.
Yes.
Anytime. Okay.
I'm nervous.